Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Today, on The Creative Mind, we're going to talk a little bit about effort. So, what I want you guys to maybe think about here is I want you to imagine a bodybuilder. I don't know if you guys are into bodybuilding. I'm not super into it, but I used to follow it more in the past. And you know, when you see a bodybuilder step out on stage at a competition, what do you see? People will say, oh, you see muscles. You see the definition of the muscles. You see conditioning. There's low fat, so you can see, the muscle striations. You can see the separation of everything. So you're seeing somebody with a lot of muscles, big muscles. They're low fat. They're arranging the body in a specific way to display that. You're looking at the balance or the symmetry, maybe the aesthetics of how the body looks. But what you're really looking at is effort, and that's what we're talking about today is effort. When I talk about the elements of creativity, inspiration, you have will, you have skill, you have effort, and you have valuation. All of those actually go into bodybuilding because you have to look at yourself and see, like, is this going to win the competition? What do I need to do? Do I need to diet harder? Do I need to work up a muscle? Do I need to put on a little bit more on the deltoid or on the, where do I need to focus, right? In order to get the thing that I'm imagining, in order to reach my inspiration, right? So all those things are happening, but you're seeing effort, and even though it's just a moment, right? You're going out on stage for 30 seconds, a minute, whatever, to do a posing routine, and then you're standing out there maybe for the call outs and all that kind of stuff. You're seeing the accumulation of not just a year's worth of effort in some cases, but maybe a lifetime's worth of effort. Effort over time is what delivers that momentary excellence. And what you're seeing on the stage is not something that can be maintained for a very long time. You'll hear bodybuilders talk about peaking, right? The idea that you're going to get down to sub 10% body fat, maybe sub 8%, getting down to 5% body fat, where your body's just virtually no subcutaneous fat. That's not something that your body wants to sustain for a long period of time. So it takes a great amount of effort, and it takes willpower, right? You have to have a will. You have to have a choice to not eat. You have to have a choice to work out when you're tired. You have to have a choice. You're making choices for all that stuff, but it's really the accumulation of effort. And that's why I find those competitions so fascinating, is that it's a moment in time that's the accumulation of a very long period of effort. And so in the creative arts, it's much the same way. When you see a book, what you're really seeing is the effort. Hold on, wait. Here's the book we're selling this week. I linked it in the chat. Okay. Eternal Dream Christmas. It has 10 of the Eternal Dream books. Very huge. Okay. We got 10 of them. So grab it. What you're seeing here, 10 books. This is in one volume. It's one book. Oh, I guess he wrote a book, right? That's the accumulation of, in this case, years worth of effort. Many hours spent at a word processor writing this. Many walks spent in the forest thinking of the stories. Much time at the computer revising, designing the cover, right? Typesetting the book so that it's comfortable to read, all that stuff. So you're seeing effort over time. Okay. Yes. First there was inspiration. I have an idea and I'm choosing to do this. And I'm choosing it many times over time. And then really when you're drafting it, when you're revising it, that's the effort. Same thing when you are a musician and you're practicing. It's the effort. You have to put in the effort in order for the product to exist, in order for you to actually finish what you started and to bring something to market. It requires effort. So that's what we're talking about today, is the effort. If you are not willing to put in the effort, then you're not actually being creative at all. So I've heard many people say, hey, I'm very creative, but I just can't seem to work. That's why I wrote this book. Keys to Prolific Creativity. Every patron gets it. It's like $2.99 on Amazon. You should get it. It's not very long. It's a pretty slim book because I wanted to strip out anything that wasn't relevant. one of my problems with nonfiction writers is they write and they write and they write and they write. It's one of those problems with new writers, actually, is they write too much. But nonfiction writers feel like they need to fill up a whole book with information, that people will see a big, thick nonfiction book and think there's value in that. No. I go the complete opposite. Is the thinner the book is, the more likely it is to contain real information. A really good example of this is actually some of the writing manuals that people use, like the Elements of Style by E.B. White. It's not a thick book. It has what you need in it, right? There's the On Writing by Stephen King is not a thick book. And it's full of like lots of musings, but those are all the things that are relevant, right? He doesn't go on and write long stories about this or that, right? It's anecdotes and feelings about writing, and that's fine, okay? So On Writing by Stephen King is I actually like that book. I know Stephen King is not super popular in my circles, but Stephen King's a major writer, one of the biggest figures in science fiction and fantasy in the later half of the 20th century, and he was incredibly productive. One thing you cannot knock Stephen King on is his output. The quantity of output is definitely there for him, and it definitely has stayed there over time. It's not like Stephen King had a burst of creativity in the late 70s and he disappeared. No, he's consistently written books that are popular for, at this point, almost 50 years. That is worth paying attention to. So if he has something to say about the craft, you should probably listen to him. You should probably listen to me because I put out lots of stuff. I've done over 1,000 videos. I've put out like 4 albums since like 2015 or whatever. I've done more than 20 books. I don't even know how many books I've done, but it's enough. And I do this while this is not my full-time gig. You know, my full-time gig really is being dad. I was a full-time teacher before that. And, you know, I've always worked and had things that occupy most of my time. I do what I do on a couple hours a day. So it's effort over time. And not all effort is equal. So this is the next thing that I want to get to, right? Is that not all effort is equal. I talk about this in the book, Practice Zombies. So Practice Zombies are a really good example of this. Practice Zombies. What are Practice Zombies? I saw this as an undergraduate and as a graduate student and as a teacher as well. Is kids that would practice, not just kids, adults, guys who were like in their 40s, I would see doing this. They go into a practice room and they just play the repertoire that they've been playing forever, that they know. They play songs that they know. And they play them and they're really good and they're like perfect and they are having a great time playing in there. But are they getting better? The answer is no. They are a zombie. They are a practice zombie. And what I mean by that is that they are just going into a trance and imagining how good they are, right? And listening to how they play and being pleased with themselves. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. If that's what you like to do, you know, that's, to me, a very amateur way of thinking. But the main thing is it's not practice. You're not actually moving closer towards your goals. You're staying right where you are. So when you think about creative goals as a musician, right, it could be, I want to like record an album. None of the music students that I went to college with wanted to record albums. I shouldn't say none. There was like 2 or 3, including me, wanted to record albums. They were all like, I need to get enough material for my senior recital. Okay, so you need an hour of material for your senior recital. They actually cut it down. By the time I was out of there, they cut it down. It used to be an hour and they cut it down to 25 minutes. They just kept lowering the requirements for what you needed to do to graduate. And it was under the explanation that the faculty didn't want to sit through hour-long concerts, that they didn't have enough time. I'm like, I don't know. I think it was really just that you couldn't get kids to put together an hour worth of material that didn't suck. They'd never played a gig by themselves, half of these people, when they got to be seniors. But anyway, you're not learning enough material. You're not learning new stuff. So you have to learn new stuff if you want to put together that hour worth of material. I had other guitar players ask me, like, how do you play so many gigs, man? How do you get all these gigs? I'm like, I hustle, I pass out cards, and that gets me the gig. But the main thing is these are like 3-hour gigs, so you can't play them because you don't know 3 hours worth of music. You know 20 minutes worth of music or 15 minutes worth. You know 2 pieces. Or like I knew guys who could win a guitar competition, but they couldn't play a gig. Why? Because they only knew 2 pieces. Those are the only 2 pieces they knew. Yeah, they were perfect. They were great. They were able to do well in a competition. But when it's like, hey, can you play this 2-hour recital? They're like, what do I do for that? I don't know what to do. Do I play like, what do I do? I'm like, no problem. I'll play as long as you want. you know? So yeah, if it's a 2-hour gig, guys, you're not going to get the gig because you just don't know enough material. And for a lot of students, it was they didn't know enough material because they were going into the practice rooms and just playing the crap that they had already known. They put in the effort in the past and they were just enjoying experiencing having arrived after effort. Nope, you have to continue putting in effort if you want to do it. And I've also learned this as I've gone on, is that getting out your guitar and playing your repertoire is not enough to maintain your repertoire because it decays. Like your skills will decay, your knowledge of your pieces will decay. So, I remember being really frustrated about this when I was like 28. Is like, I had to always be practicing stuff that I already knew, and like, all of a sudden I can't play the scale in this piece. What happened? It's because I didn't practice it. So I have to go back and I have to practice that piece again. And I remember getting really frustrated and annoyed with that. But it's kind of the nature of the game. Is that, you have to continue working on things that are good. That's what it really is to practice. So yeah, not all effort is equal, and so I look at this with writing. So let's transition back to writing. We started with bodybuilding. Bodybuilding actually is like an incredible metaphor for a lot of the things that we do creatively, because the end result is a competition that's more about aesthetics than it is about like some objective measure about running fast or something like that. You're more of an artist. But if you're bodybuilding and your deltoids are undersized, well, obviously what you're doing is not working for your deltoids. So people come up with lots of explanations. Are my drugs off? Like, am I not using enough tests? Do I need to is there some other steroid that's gonna activate these, is gonna activate the receptors on the deltoids more? Or maybe you need to do different exercises, right? So the valuation should bring you back to, what do you change? A lot of people are like, I just genetically have small arms. Yeah, that's great. Okay. So what are you going to do with that? Are you going to work extra hard on your arms? Are you going to work extra hard on those deltoids that are undersized? Or are you going to just give up? Or like, what does that mean if it's genetic? How does that change your effort? So yeah, you got to change what you're doing. Going through the motions and doing exercises you've done a bunch of times before that obviously don't stimulate anything because you're not seeing it. You got to do something different. So it's the same thing with anything else in artistry. It's like doing the same thing you've always done. If it's not producing what you want on the other side, you got to change it. So if we're transitioning into writing, writing is really a different way of exercising creativity compared to practicing or like bodybuilding or something, right? When you're practicing for a gig, you're trying to get the music into a certain performance state where you really know it well and you can play without many mistakes and you can express things correctly. It's a little bit different with writing because it's closer to painting. So writing and painting are more like related, I guess, than just practicing music. So when you are painting, the goal is to have a finished painting that just exists. And it's the same thing with the book. The goal is to have a finished book, which you can only get through the end of January, that just exists. The book just exists. So when you're putting an effort to make the book, you can have bad effort or good effort, but it's really easy to tell the difference between the two, in my opinion. And most of the people who haven't done it for a while, they will come up with many excuses for why what I'm about to say is not the case, which is if the word count is not there, then the effort is not there. That is, you need to focus on how much you are getting done more than you are focusing on how much time you are spending doing it. We do this in music too. I practice for 2 hours. Is it 2 hours of good practice or were you a practice zombie? Okay, 30 minutes of solid practice on stuff that you don't know yet is better than 2 hours of you playing through your repertoire twice. It just is. Okay, you're going to get more done with that. So it's the same thing with writing a book. So people are like, I write for 30 minutes a day. It's like, how much you get done in that 30 minutes? What do you mean? It's like, yeah, did you write a page? Did you write 2 pages? Okay. So if I'm doing my standard manuscript format, which I draft in, which is always Times New Roman, 12 point, single spaced, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. 1 page is 500 words. So if I'm writing 1 page in 30 minutes, that means in about 2 hours of work, I'd be writing about 2,000 words. That's about right. So if you work in 30 minutes a day and you write 1 page, you're doing pretty good. 1 page a day, that adds up a lot. Effort over time, okay? Write 1 page. Write 1 page And then you'll realize that a book is about 250 pages, a long book. It's 250 of those singles. So in less than a year, you'll have drafted a book, okay? 500 words goes a long way. But what I've realized a lot of writers do is, first of all, they haven't figured out that consistency. They're not working every day. But they're like, I work for 30 minutes. Well, did you look at the page for 30 minutes? Did you write a paragraph? Did you write 2 pages? Like, what did you do in that 30 minutes? So I find it's much more important to focus on the scope rather than the time. So if we think about this in another analogy, which is software development, when you're developing a piece of software, you have it has a function, whatever that software is. If it's a game or it's like a piece of productivity software, or banking software or something, there is a set of features that need to be in it. And usually there's an amount of time which you have to get it done. And so you need to fix one of those two. Either we're going to work on it for 6 months, and whatever features we're able to get good in 6 months, that's what we're going to try to ship. Or we're going to make the software with all the features we want it to have, and we'll ship it when it's ready. There's good and bad to both of these, but it's very hard to do both at once. It's really hard to say, I'm going to work for this amount of time and get this much done. You can do it if you're a professional, like if you're really solid and you know what you're doing. Like I've demonstrated consistently with the live writes that I can write about 2,000 to 3,500 words live. So that means if I'm setting aside 2 hours a day, I know that I can get 2,000 words a day done. That means if I have to write a 100,000 word book, I just divide that by 2 and I'm done in 50 days. I know that in 50 days I can get that draft done. So if I get commissioned to write a 100,000 word Star Wars book, if I get that job, if I get that gig, it's a 60-day gig. I know I can do it. No problem. Easy. I'll get it done. No worries. Pay me, right? If you've never done this before, you really should focus on the word count, because it may be hard. You may have an off day. You may be tired. You may be upset about someone being sick. And your output's going to be bad for that day. Do you just accept that? Well, if you have to get something done, dude, you have to get that daily word count done. You have to force it out. You have to make it happen. That's really important. And when you're thinking about fixing time versus scope, the problem with a book is that the scope is fixed for you. It's not like I'm going to write for 60 days and ship whatever I finished. That's not going to be a good book. A story has a beginning, middle, and an end, which make it what it is. So you have to actually finish the entirety of the book. So what I usually recommend is you have to fix the scope at the macro level, but you probably shouldn't fix the time at the macro level unless you are really good, because you don't know what's going to hit. You might get sick and miss 5 days, and that's something that happens. Okay, so fix the scope at the macro level, not the time. Fix the time at the micro level, meaning make sure that you're working every day. Work an hour every day or 30 minutes every day. So as long as you're consistent with that, you'll find that your effort will get better over time as long as you're consistent with it. First day that you ever try to do this, you're going to suck. You'll get 1 paragraph written. That's okay. Just accept it and be like, okay, I'm not on a deadline. Eventually the book will be done. But I put in my hour. I put in my hour of work, and the next day it's easier, and it's easier and easier and easier until eventually, you're getting 1,500 words a day done without any problems. Stephen King, in his most productive years, was writing 2,500 words a day. That's not a whole lot, right? I write 2,500 words on a live stream. So yes, you can totally write 2,500 words a day, and he did a lot of that while he was working other jobs and had kids and stuff. So, more power to you, more power to him, right? He did a good job with that. As a retired man, he said he cut back to 1,500 words a day so he could just goof off more, right? He could rest more on his laurels. He still puts out like a book every year at least, but it's a, 1,500 words a day. He's only working an hour or two. The rest of the time he's having coffee and posting on Twitter or doing whatever he wants to do on Twitter. And that's fine. That's great for him. So yes, you can do that. So that's the way that you're going to have to do it if you are kind of starting out. But I usually recommend people have a word count goal. That will ensure that all of your effort is of a high enough quality to finish your project. The quality, we're rating the quality basically on the output. How many words were you able to write? How much were you actually able to do? Evaluating the quality of the sentences. This is always a rebut. I've gotten it many, many, many times from people who just aren't experienced at doing this, or just don't know any better, right? They're like, well, you know, do you want to write 1,500 words of garbage or like 500 words of quality? I'll take the quality. It's like you don't get it. Is that the professional writer writes 10,000 words of quality while you're still writing 500 words of crap, right? The writers who are really good. What's up, Hobo? The dog wants to come in and say hi. Can you see him? He's over here. Hey, little buddy. You want to come in and say hi? My other dog is gone. Hey, bud. What's wrong? You're just lonely? Okay. He's got a little bed in here. He's going to go sit on the bed. Are you going to look out the window? It's Honeybun's window. She go sit in that and bark. Yeah, so tracking your word count will force you to do a certain amount. And the truth is, the only way that you're going to get good is by doing a large quantity. I've talked about this before. You got to practice. The more you practice, the better you get. The more words you write, the better you get at writing those words. What's up, bud? Come here. Come on. You want to put your paws up here and show people what you look like? Come here. Come on. There you go. Now let's see if here. No, the camera's blocking the dog. Here he is. Here's the dog. Here, look at the camera. Can you see it? Hi. What's got you upset, bud? You went outside and played with your friends. That's a good boy. That's a good dog. Everybody likes dogs. You're a good dog. It's my little bird dog. Little bird dog. You're a good boy. All right, get down. You can't sit in my lap. It's not gonna work. All right. Yeah, Alberic says writing for 30 minutes ends up being 10 to 100 words. I like to track word count ever since before my NaNoWriMo days, and sometimes it gets, you're gonna get into the flow. You know, it may take 30 minutes to like get into the zone where you're really being productive. Some people can just like turn it on and write 30 minutes, but most people need a little bit more time to kind of get into the swing of things and kind of feel everything flowing. I know it takes me a while to kind of build up speed and get to where like really like banging out the words and doing a good job. So yeah, when it comes to writing, I really recommend people have a word count goal, because that will keep you productive over the long term and help you to hit your goals. Whereas just saying I'm going to do it for 30 minutes a day, it's probably not going to cut it. And also doing the excuse of like I'd rather it be high quality and be less is just that's just you making an excuse for not doing your work, right? Yeah. You want 1,500 words that are unreadable? Like that's kind of hard to do unless you are, I don't know, or 500 good words. It's like, no, you need to do 1,500 good words. It's not, don't choose one or the other. Choose, I'm writing all the words and they're good. Choose both. Choose both. And you're going to be able to do both. You're going to be able to do both the more you do it. You know, the more consistent you are with doing this every day, 30 minutes, an hour. You know, I recommend 30 minutes for people who are kind of new to writing, because it's hard to focus, right? We live in an environment where our focus is constantly pulled away from us all the time. And even if a few seconds of boredom may make you want to whip out your phone. And it can be a little boring staring at the page going like, I don't know how to write this. You know, so you have to kind of work through that. You have to force yourself to be bored for a minute to like get those words out. So 30 minutes. Often it's hard to focus on something for more than 30 minutes for somebody who's kind of new at it. After a while, it's not that hard. You can do 2 hours, no problem, like that. It's the same thing with practicing guitar, right? New players, I usually say practice 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And, you know, if you feel like you're really more motivated, try splitting your practice up. Do 30 minutes, do a half hour in the morning, a half hour after school or whatever you're doing. Because if you feel yourself getting bored or wanting to quit or getting tired of it, that's also going to sap your motivation. So it's better to just say, I got to do my 30 minutes and then I'm going to do something else. And while you're doing that other thing, sometimes you start thinking about, oh yeah, I want to learn this. This wasn't sounding good. I need to go back and do it. You start thinking about what you're doing a lot. When I was, teaching guitar and performing and doing all that stuff back in the 2000s, back in the 20 years ago, my practice sessions were split up during the day quite a bit. So I would usually practice 2 hours in the morning. We did like a little group technique thing that forced us to get up and start playing at 6 a.m. We worked from 6 to 8. Then I taught at 2 colleges. And of course I had a guitar in my hand that whole time. Then after that I would go teach private lessons. I'd have a guitar in my hand the whole time. Then I'd come at night, and that's where, in the afternoon and evening is when we would have all of our graduate classes, because we were all either working for the university or had other jobs. So that's when they always scheduled them. I'd do those. Then I'd practice a little bit before I left for the evening. And then I'd go home, and play a game and go to sleep. Do whatever I needed to do there. So yeah, or if I didn't have to teach in the morning, I would just practice. I would play those 2 hours, take a break, go eat some breakfast, hang out with some friends for like half an hour, and then I would go back in, do another 2 hours, go eat lunch, do another 2 hours, then go to classes. If I had an hour between classes, I would practice in that hour. So it split up a lot over the day, which helped a lot. But for me, it was not a huge focus issue. I had been developing that focus since I was in high school. In high school, my focus was bad, but I knew kind of ways to get around it. Like I would practice repetitive things with the TV on, so I could be constantly letting my attention span go as I made that effort. When I was composing music, I could be in the studio for 6-8 hours straight and not even really think about what I was doing there. I might take a 5-minute break to go like across the street to the 7-Eleven and like get a terrible sandwich and a soda or something to because the hunger just, But otherwise I could be there just forgetting to eat all night long. Not necessarily good. I don't recommend people be obsessive like that, but sometimes you have those periods in your life where you get really obsessive about art, and that's okay. But yeah, the focus stopped being an issue once I had developed that. When I was a freshman in college, focus was still an issue. It was really hard for me to practice for an hour. By the time I was a graduate student, it was like, dude, there's no issue. I was super into what I was doing. And also that you start to kind of fall into the things that you really love to do. And so the practice becomes fun. The practice becomes enjoyable. It becomes something that you actually want to do. And that's good too. The way I always tried to encourage my friends, there's nothing to edit into a better version if you don't write even a crummy first draft. At first, yeah. If you have a bad first draft, you still have a completed book. If you try to make every sentence, and this is the thing, right? Is like, I want every sentence to be as good as pick writer that you think writes good sentences. I want it to all be as good as Faulkner. Great. You have to write a lot of sentences. You have to practice writing lots of sentences and making that effort. You're not going to be able to do it by rewriting the same sentence 20 times until you feel like it's as good as Faulkner. It's just not going to happen. You need to write 7,000 sentences or something, right? You got to write a lot of sentences to be as like anything, and also to develop your own skill too, right? You have to put in the effort. The effort comes before the valuation. So the valuation is like the last thing on the list, and I'll talk about that next week. But the valuation part, if you have no completed draft, you can't value anything. There's no value to be had. It's worthless. Your unfinished book has zero value. It has zero value because it's not done. So you need to finish it, right? If you have the music for a guitar piece, but you can't play it, it's worthless. You don't know that piece. You have to practice it. This is like basic and important stuff. How would you equate word count to a solo music project? Song a week, try to record something every day. Definitely in that practice loop, overthinking it. So this is a really good one because, it's really easy to track how many words you write. You can track how many seconds you record. So that's an interesting one, right? And I try to set a goal for when I'm practicing a piece, like I'm going to learn these measures. Focused practice. And I do talk about that in the book. and you talk about that in the Keys to Prolific Creativity book, is picking practice goals. So have a goal for your session. So sit down and think about what you can do. What can I do tonight? Maybe it's just tracking drums or something. Maybe it's just doing a guitar. I'm going to do the guitar track. That's my goal for this weekend. Because you'll find some songs require more attention than other songs. That's just what ends up happening. But yeah, you can make a goal like, I'm going to track the song this week. So if we're equating it to writing, like drafting, right? You're going to do all the basic tracks for a song that week. You're not going to mix it. You're not going to add in a bunch of other stuff, right? You're not going to worry about making everything perfect. You're going to get all the tracks down so you can hear the song and hear what it sounds like. So you make that a goal, okay? And you can split it up from there. If you're going to work on it 7 days, day 1 is going to be, I'm going to track all the guitar parts. I'm going to track all the rhythm guitar. Day 2, I'm going to track drums. Day 3, I'm going to track all the bass stuff. Day 4, I'm going to put in vocals. And day 6, I'm going to work on all the guitar solos. Day 7, I'm going to try to clean everything up as much as possible. And then the track is done. And you may find that you run into like a hiccup there, right? Like you're trying to track the guitar parts, you figure out you can't play a part. Well, you have to stop. You got to burn 30 minutes practicing that guitar part to get it perfect on tape. And then you can do it. Or you may find that, like this is also a thing. So modern guys, when they're recording guitar, tend to not record live amps. There's a lot of reasons for that, but the big one is that you want to be able to change the sound after you've recorded it. Same thing with drums, right? It's why so many guys like program drums, is we can just change out. We really can just change out the sound of the drums later if we want to. We don't have to rely on what we did one night to get the drum sound right, and we don't have to worry about EQing it into oblivion. If we have everything in separate tracks, it's really easy. Or if it's all triggered drums, then that's even easier. Or electronic drums. And so all of my stuff is all triggered or electronic drums. I have my electronic kit out there. I'll either play it in on the kit, or I will play some of it in on the kit and add some things after the fact to like make a drum track. It's all played in live, but it's not may clean it up after the fact, right? So you may run into hiccups like that. I don't like the guitar sound. I got to get the guitar sound right. Or like as you add instruments, you may have to go back and remix things. That happens a lot. Or you may find that just tracking bass is like everything was one take. I just did one take and I have extra time. On to the next thing. On to vocals. Or whatever it's going to be. Yeah. So, yeah, if you could do a song a week. There's guys who do the equivalent of NaNoWriMo in February. They try to do like a track a day. Like, for me, I could do a track a day in 30 minutes because I can improvise something in 30 minutes. I have a whole improv music channel. That's what you're hearing right now. So, but it'd be really challenging. You'd have to work all day. I'd have to work all day to make like one complete good song or track and composing it at the same time. Musicians back in the day, studio time was really expensive, so they didn't come in the studio to write. They came in the studio with songs that were done and rehearsed, and they put them on tape. We're talking like big bands would spend 1 week recording their album. Like a week, yeah. It wasn't like this 6-month drawn out affair. They had practiced those tunes as a band. They went in and they just cut them. I think Stevie Ray Vaughan's first album was just recorded live in a warehouse on like an 8-track. They just put up the mics and the band played. And that's the album. That's Texas Flood. The band was really tight. They were really well rehearsed and they knew all their songs. Not only that, but there's 10 songs on the album, but they recorded like 20 and just picked 10. And then they recorded 8 more for the next album. But half of those were re-recordings of things that they cut from the first album. And they did it again for the third album. I think Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble knew so much music that by the time they recorded their first album, that even by the time Stevie Ray Vaughan died, there were multiple tracks that they would play live that never made it onto an album, that they still had been playing. That's how much music that they had that they knew as a band. It was really incredible. But nowadays, when you're like composing directly into a DAW, it's a little bit different. It takes a little bit longer to do. So I don't know. I mean, that might be a goal when we wrap up this year or get King Leper out. Do you guys want to see a little You guys want to see a little preview of the here, I'll show you a little preview of the current cover. I'm going to the more classic cover design this time around, rather than like, you know, 2010s pulp paperback. We're going with like really classic fantasy. Where is it? Boom, here it is. It looks good. Okay. All right, so there's what it looks like. There's your preview of King Leper. I like the black. You can do a couple. This is not the final art, the final art, but it's pretty much the final art by Jesse White. So we went with like a 3-tone painting, ink painting, which is really different. And I rather like. Let's see. Okay, so yes, we do green. We could do like a green gradient, which is, I don't know. It's okay. But I think Jesse agrees with me that the black, or we do blue. Blue is very, my wife says it's kind of textbook looking. And I'm like, yeah, I could see that. I don't know why blue, but this blue and yellow is a good fantasy combo. But the black, I think, just really pops. I think it's got a little bit more pop to it. I don't know what you guys think. If you think it's got some good pop or not. But anyway, there's a little preview of that. Yeah. What do you think of Nick Cave? Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. I haven't listened to Nick Cave's music in a long time. I used to like it. I don't really have too much else to say about it. Metallica did a cool Nick Cave cover, Loverman. I remember that. That was cool. Yeah, the green was a pretty strong gradient. Let's take a look at that again. Yeah, I mean, you can always toy around with this. Like, check this out. So, you turn on the color gradient. You can always, like, watch this. You can always, like, pull the opacity down so that it's like a dragon burst gradient. Like, get this teal going. You can do a lot of fun effects with Photoshop, right? And we can tone it down like that. So then we're pulling some blue in, and then it has this teal color, which I kind of like. You can also, you know, we can turn the opacity down here and get one of the underlayers to pop out, which are like, there's some other stuff I was experimenting with down here, like this, you know, this parchment paper look, to get different things. There's a lot of, you know, just play around with it a little bit, find what you really think is cool. And there's like leaves, like here's like some dragon leather, which looks kind of cool. All those look kind of okay, but they just, I'm kind of, right now I'm feeling like the simplicity of like just two colors. Like the black looks really striking to me. You do this is very dark blue. Very dark blue looks really good too. Yeah. The black one looks best to me. The bright green looks garish. The blue isn't bad. The bright green is very, you know, to me it's very 90s. And it says fantasy. Green is a fantasy color, so is blue. The gradient, you know, we can also play with this gradient a little bit here, where we could just pull this a little bit more towards a desaturated color like that, and boom, get a little more olive, and that'll pull that off a little bit differently, you know. But it's very bright. You can do like a special edition cover that's a little bit different if you want to. Again, I kind of like the idea of pulling in the blue. To me, like a blue-green gradient looks cool. Oh, go on, pups. The kids are home. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I kind of like this teal. I think that's a little different, you know. Or that failing, like a really, you know, a really dark blue would look cool. I don't know. I'll play around with it. But I think I like the black. I think the black, like the simplicity of the black, you know, It's two colors. It just like pops. It just pops better. Yeah, I like the black. All right, the black and the kind of neutral colors. So yeah, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. I used to listen to Nick Cave a lot more than I do. But, yeah. So I think the general consensus is like the black. The black is what's really good. So I like the dark blue. I mean, you could always do. The other problem is by the time you try to get something in print, you'll find that the colors are always just a little off when you print something. They're not quite what you design. They're not. First of all, they're not quite what you design in the RGB space. But even if you get in the WYSIWYG space, or not WYSIWYG, if you get in the ink space, you'll find that the printer's always just a little bit off. Whereas black is black. Like you can count on black looking black. So it's a little bit easier to control. The black looks nonfiction because it looks a little more serious. And that's kind of why I was thinking like, you know, you could do a really, you know, really dark blue. But I kind of like the teal. I might do like a really dark teal or something like this. I think that this has an interesting effect as well. You know, just subtle, like a really subtle green gradient, and then this kind of goes to blue. Yeah. So yeah, the black, I think it's very striking, but you're right, it could look a little nonfiction. But the dark blue, you know, dark blue, I think could work really good too. It's like really like a deep navy blue. Both of those are good. Kind of like in the teal, but we'll, you know, I'll play around with it. That's a preliminary design. You can also like frame this a little bit more, or there's lots of things you can do. That's versus, you know, a more kind of garish cover. Part was that Jesse chose to like do this in a. You could also, by the way, I'm sorry, I'm like, you're not even seeing what I'm doing here. Yeah, check it. You could do like this dark blue. I think the dark blue looks very classy to me. Like that really dark blue. But I kind of like that teal. Anyway, versus like a more garish cover, photo cover, or like even painted cover. It just looks a little more classy to have it like a framed thing. This was a popular design style in the late 90s, but I like it. You know, I like it quite a bit. You could do an ebook cover in whatever shape you want, by the way. So we could totally design like an 18 by 9, or what am I thinking of? 1920 by 1080. What is that? 19 by 8, whatever that. You know, you could totally do a landscape style ebook cover. Nothing to say you can't, because there's books that come in that shape. So you can do whatever shape cover you want for Amazon. So I could totally do this as like the paperback cover, and then have the ebook cover be 18 by 9 or whatever it is, whatever that aspect ratio is. Just as an example, like we can actually do that real quick. That might be fun. Let's get this kind of set up here. Let's do a new one. We'll just do 1920, not inches. Let's go pixels. 300,000 pixels now. 1920 by 1080. You know. Actually, we should probably double it. What's our 4K resolution? Is it just double? It's like 30. No, 3840. So it is just double. Okay. 3840, they're rounding up. 2160. All right. So we're going to do a 4K guy here. All right. And then we just grab this. There's a physical version of this painting, by the way, so Jesse should totally sell that. We'll pop it up here, right, like this. And, or we could, like, shrink it to be whatever this is. Do canvas size. Let's cut it by, like, 600 pixels. It actually doesn't matter what we do here. Image, canvas size. Doing pixels. Okay. Let's cut the width down to 3200. And the height to like 2000. Okay. Alright, so yeah, look at that. So that's a little bit better. Let's find a better one. Pixels. Pixels. Yeah, there we go. So that's a good way to do this. Now we're just gonna kind of pull this off the edges here, so like we get the full thing. And we could just grab this group, title text, and pop it in here. Then we'll play with this. Give it a solid drop shadow. And instead of a light stroke, we're going to give it a black one. There we go. And we're going to make our inner glow or color overlay. We're going to really darken it up a lot. Or let's actually lighten it quite a bit. And then we're going to make 2 drop shadows here. There we go. And we can even create like a little bevel effect here. That looks good. We really want that to pop out more, so let's do a darker color. Or we can do like a contrasting color, like blue. You know. So you could do this as like an ebook cover. Inner glow. Let's crank that up quite a bit. And let's get one that's a little bit more. There we go. You can even do this as like a color burn. Let's do this one we can do is kind of pop this spread up. There we go. You have to think about how this is. Oh, shoot, you can't see it. What am I doing? There you go. Boom. So, you know, let's shrink it down. Oh, what does that look like? Does it pop? Yeah, it pops. And then we can do author name. So you can absolutely do. You can absolutely do. Like weird aspect ratios for your ebook covers. There's nothing to say you can't. In fact, you may find that it's really effective to do so. Another drop shadow here. All right, so there you go. And we can, if we want this to be a little bit smaller, like that. Or you can, you know, put it here or there or wherever you want. King Leper. You know. Boom, there you go. Let's see what that looks like. Zoom down. I think I have some other like we could do some different beveling effects in here too. So we can crank up the size like this. And we can also give it, we can do a gradient overlay that would be kind of gold looking, or kind of this more this bronzy overlay. Okay. Like that. Some different effects. Just to make it like really pop. In fact, we could do like another light colored stroke here. That's kind of in the gold range. Something like that. Here you go. Now you have like a little wide aspect ratio ebook cover. You're allowed to do that on Amazon. It's kind of cool. So there we go. Definitely like the blue contrasting with the warmer colors of the image. I think a deep blue is what I might end up going with. So, it'll have all of the same pop as the black, but it will kind of hint that we're in the genre space. I do like cover illustrations that give some hint of what to visualize in a fantasy novel. Pure text covers are okay if I'm already invested in the series and know what I'm reading. Yeah. Well, the whole idea of a cover is to give... You're kind of making a promise to the reader about what's in there. It doesn't need to be super precise, but you kind of want to get a good general idea. Right? A lot of covers are simply generic. They're just there to telegraph the genre. Even really popular ones, like here's Ender's Game, and it's just a ship and a planet. And you're like, okay, what's going on in this? It's just telling you it's space sci-fi. That's all. Right? Yeah. If it's a cool drawing that's somewhat obtuse, somewhat obscured, let's say. Obtuse would mean really direct. A lot of people misuse the word obtuse. I've even had people in comments saying, like, you're using obtuse wrong. I'm like, I'm not. I think you don't know what it means. Obtuse means blunt. So not obscured, right? I think you mean obscured. No offense. I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings. It's one of those funny words. It's kind of like saying arbitrary. Arbitrary actually means the opposite of what a lot of people think it means. They're like, it's arbitrary. I'm like, arbitrary means like deciding. The arbiter, the decider, right? So it's a deciding thing. So if I pick an arbitrary age of consent, that doesn't mean it's meaningless. It means that it's deciding. Right? The age of consent is arbitrary in that it is what it is. We've decided that it's going to be that, and it's going to be whatever, right? So yeah. So it's just a funny thing because I've had people in comments get upset that they don't know what obtuse means. I don't know, these secret kings who don't remember math class. An obtuse angle is like this. An acute angle is sharp. When you are acutely affected, that means it's sudden. Anyway, I might make this like a cool, like an 18:9 book cover. I think that looks kind of cool. And we could do a different color here. You could do black. There's a lot of colors. This kind of all flows together. And if I like zoom out really far, and like you see that when browsing, you're like, what is that? You could still read the letters really good because of the drop shadows. Because the drop shadows. Vox Day wrote a good article, I think today. That's basically like people think women are empathetic when they're actually emotionally projecting. I'm not trying to offend any women here, but it's like, why are women so concerned about Syrian immigrants? It's like, well, it's because they're projecting how they would feel and why they would escape war onto the Syrian immigrants who are actually there to get money and to victimize people, right? They're not really, right? They're projecting their emotions onto other people. They're not actually feeling what that other person feels, which would be really being empathetic towards migrants would be like, oh yeah, I empathize. Syria sucks and they have a chance to get on German welfare and bang German women. Let's do that, right? That's actual empathy, which is not what people want to think of. like this. Or we could, we could do this too, as I'm thinking about it, right? We can unlock these. Just wait, it's below the thing. There it is. Unhook those, and we can just move them around. There you go. King Leper. And then that look good. Oops. I want to tilt that. Okay. That looks pretty good. I like that L going over other letters. All right. So then we select those and we link them up, and boom. King Leper. There's an ebook cover, a non-standard ebook cover to draw the eye. We can. What else can we do to this? Let's do. You guys want to add like a little vignette? We'll add a little vignette. Yeah, it's a common thing. People assume intentions in others that just aren't true because of the different cultural values, etc. Yeah, actually empathizing would be understanding how that person feels, understanding their perspective. So to understand their perspective, you have to actually think like they would think. Not, what if I were that? No, that's you projecting. That's not actually you empathizing. Yeah. Obtuse means lacking sharpness or quickness of sensibility or intellect, or lacking sharpness or quickness of sensibility or intellect. That's not that. I don't care about what Webster says, right? But that's true, right? It's not sharp. It's wide. So it's direct. If you're being obtuse, it just means you're not being at all, like you're not being at all subtle. Obtuse is unsubtle, right? It's fat. And that's how you're going to see it used in literature, by the way, especially if you're reading anything that's like pretty old. All right. So there's our fun little non-standard ebook cover, which we can do. And you could always reverse this, right? But I think King Leper looks good down there. And let's see what it looks like. Shrink it down. I think it looks cool. That's what it would look like on the Amazon recommended page. Cool. Yeah, I was going to add a little vignette. So we have this. Vignettes are really easy to do in Photoshop. You just grab a paintbrush and you paint one. And I'm going to start with 100% opacity like this, and I'm just going to paint in the corners like that. A little vignette. Then we can drop the opacity down quite a bit and size up the brush. We're at 500. We're going to go with 1100. And then you can just paint a little extra vignette there if you want. Boom, just to kind of darken the edges if you want. Kind of pulls in the darkness of the edges. Not totally necessary, but you can do it if you want to. Just create a little vignette effect. Looks good. Yeah. I think that would be like a kind of a cool cover right there. The second one is difficult to comprehend, not clear or precise in thought or expression. It's like if I say to someone you're being obtuse, that means you're being overly direct. You're just like being like a big blunt object. Versus obscure, that's not really how it's used. Now, Merriam-Webster will also. Why don't you look up the definition of woman in Merriam-Webster? This is why you can't really rely on things like definitions as a source of authority for semantics. What matters is how we're using the word now, either from the context or like how it's obviously meant in a text. So textualism matters. When I say someone's being obtuse, I don't mean that they're being obscure. I mean that they're being like a big blunt object, because that's what obtuse means. An obtuse angle is big and fat. It is not acute and narrow. All right, you're not sharp. You're blunt. It can also mean stupid, right? You can say someone's obtuse, they're like being stupid, but really it's that they're blunt. They're a blunt object. Right? So it's a good point though, right? And people have to bring it up. If somebody's ever looking up Merriam-Webster's definition, be like, well, what do they say a woman is? Right? Good luck. So you can't just rely on like a written definition. And the thing is that, dictionaries are there for your convenience in case you need to figure out what a word means, not to tell someone what a word means based on how they're using it. Right? You're going to like call up a dead author and be like, I don't think you used obtuse the way that Merriam-Webster defined it in 2024. It's like, no, he was using it in a specific way that meant something at that time. The meaning of words doesn't just magically change because Merriam-Webster wrote them differently in 2024. All right, let's take a look at this. All right, off we go. Going for about an hour. I'm probably going to call it a little bit early here today. And that's just because there's not that much else to say. I went on a big rant about work. And we got to look at a preview of the book cover, which is good. I will tell people, you can only buy this through the end of January, so now is definitely the time to get it. Which is through the end of January. And I will see you guys next time. I'm going to link this again. I'm going to link it again real quick so everybody can get it. This has 10 books. It's got 10 of the books in it. No live stream next week? I don't know. What is next week? Next week is Christmas. So, yeah, we'll probably won't do one on Christmas. But I will do a live write this Friday. So we will continue the live write this Friday and probably next week as well. After that, it's New Year's Day. I don't know if we'll do one on New Year's Day. Thank you for ordering the book. I do appreciate it. Because this giant thing is going to disappear after a while. Giant thing's going to disappear. All right, I think that's about it for today. Have a great one, and I will see you all next time.